Hi, my name is Jay Oza. I teach, mentor, and coach people on public speaking so that they can get winning high stakes speeches, whether it's one on one in a job interview, in front of a small group at a business meeting, or before a large audience at a conference. Today, I'm going to give you a job interview tip. And this may not be a tip to you, but it's something you should consider when you are going for an interview. And it's something that I talked about in a previous slide about the process. And a lot of the people that I coach ask me, well, what is a good process for an interview? Before I give you the process, let me tell you one thing that people don't quite understand and they get frustrated. And this works both from the company side and also from candidate side. It's this: interviewing is an amateur's game. Okay, let me explain that. And the reason I say that is the people that are good at doing the job are not good at interviewing. They don't spend their whole day interviewing. Interviewing is something they do when they are looking for a job. So obviously they're not going to be good at that. Similarly, the people in the company that are interviewing, they have other things to do. They're busy with their work. They got to meet deadlines and stuff. They're not spending the entire day and week figuring out like how can I become the world's best interviewer. So when you get them two together, it's two amateurs. If I may use golf term, two duffers playing together. Okay, they're gonna really tear up the golf course. Really, literally tear up the golf course. That's how bad they are. And then they may not get invited again, and that's the end of it. Okay. So, what is a good process for an interview? And another thing that has happened is that interview process, when I look at the clients and what they have to deal with, it is so damn complicated. I can't even make sense out of it. I'm like, how is this going to determine anything? All right, here's what you should shoot for. When you go for an interview, whoever that you're meeting, tell them you're going to come in, they get the morning, and then the afternoon is yours. And then lunchtime you can get together. Okay, so let's say from 10, 9:30 or 9 to 12, you're going to go and give a presentation on whether if you're a PhD, you can talk about your thesis. If there's a different project, you talk about that as a group, and they can ask you questions because this is the stuff that you have done. You know it well, and then they can ask questions. So you cannot say like, "Oh my God, that was an unfair question. How dare they ask this question?" This is the stuff that you have on your resume. They should be asking that question. So you cannot say that they asked me this question about this algorithm that I didn't know anything about. They will not. They shouldn't be. They should only be asking stuff that you have done. Why did you make this decision? Who was involved? What was the problem? What was the solution? What was the outcome? And the typical format for that is take a problem. Uh, you can give a brief background, the problem, the solution, the outcome, and the lessons learned for each of the work that you have done or any kind of specific project that you want to talk about. And from that, they should be able to ask questions. This actually reveals a lot about you, how good you are at communicating, how well you know your stuff technically, and how well you can present it, and how well you can answer questions. All the stuff you would be doing at when you get the job, when you're working. That's your so that's you're in front of the stage like I am, answering questions, explaining, taking questions, and it'll show them that this guy is in complete command, and that's I think is fair. Then after the lunch, the second half, it's the opposite. Each individual member of the team should be presenting to you on what they're doing. Take up one of the problems that they were working on, and here's the problem, here's the solution, here's the outcome, here's the lessons learned. Just a brief, a rough structure that I've given to you. It could be different, right? And now, why is that important from an interviewing standpoint for the person who is giving you the presentation? What is he really trying to find out? How good you are at asking questions. The interview today is so flawed It's all about how good you are at answering questions that they have. But it never gets to the other way around. How good are you at asking questions? Because if you're asking penetrating questions, that is quite revealing that this guy has thought about something that I didn't even think about. Wow, he knows his stuff. And that's something that hardly ever comes up. Just recently, I was coaching a client, and he had this real intense interview at one of the top companies. And they said, well, your interview is going to be like 55 minutes where they're going to ask you questions, and then you're going to get only 5 minutes. So make sure that if there are 6 people interviewing you, that you can kind of spread it out. I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's not how it should be. And ultimately, I told him that he had to cancel that interview, which he did. And I said, look, the format that you got to know, format that you think is fair, that tests your ability to know your stuff, because that's the project you worked on. And then when they're giving you a presentation, it's their way of determining not only whether they can explain their project. Like, let's say if I'm on the interviewing team, not only do I have to do a good job at explaining, but then I also want to be able to be so good that I want to be able to elicit good questions from the person. And if I can get good questions and we have a good back and forth, that gives me a good understanding. Wow, I can work with this guy. That hardly ever happens anymore. Today the interview is all convoluted. You take any big companies, whether it's Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, you name it, the whole interviewing process is just a total mess. Nobody gets it. It's not even designed to hire you. It's designed to reject you. That's not an interview. So if you are going to interview with any of these companies, make sure you have your process. And if it doesn't align with the process, then don't do it. You're not going to come out looking good. So if you're on the HR side watching this, that's how you should do an interview. The first half, let this person come in, the candidate, speak to the entire team. Then each member gives them the presentation one-on-one, and then see what kind of questions that person's willing to ask. Can that person work with that? That, in my opinion, is a fair interview. I don't know if there are any other ways of doing this better than that. So that's it. This, I think, is simple. Both sides can understand it, and there are no real frustration like, oh, I didn't know what I was getting into. You're not going to throw out questions like how many cows are in America or things like that. Those are idiotic questions that don't prove anything. This is directly what you want to know. The interview should be a proxy for a job. And that's what an interview should look like. But I'm just giving you works. The question is, will company ever adopt it? But you shouldn't compromise. Thank you for watching, and good luck.